Shalom, beloved, and hopefully everyone is doing wonderful today. I want to go a little deeper with the message about the system usufruct in us. And for those that may not get this, it may not be for you, but for those that are interested, again, hopefully this message bring a little bit more clarity, right? But you can be able to navigate or put yourself in a better position or get some clarity, right? Again, on why I say what I say. Remember, this is not legal advice. I do not offer legal advice. And if you're seeking legal advice, seek yourself an attorney. This is just what I see. Now, before I get into this, let me start off by giving all glory and honor to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and to His Son, the heir of the throne, Yeshua HaMashiach. I'd like to also send out a greeting to the brothers and sisters that's trying to teach and reach the children of the diaspora, and also to the Gentiles that are gathered with us in sincerity. To you guys, I say, Shalom. Like I said, usufruct, again, is derived from two words, Usury and Fructus. And we're going to get definitions out of the Black Law Dictionary and some scriptures out of the Bible to get context, right? To show you, again, where they got these principles from. Anyway, let's start off by getting the first definition is usufruct. Usufruct. In the civil law, the right of enjoying a thing, the property of which is vested in another, and to draw from the same all the profits, right, utilities, and advantage which it may produce, provided it be without altering the substance of the thing. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Let's get usury. Usury. Collectively, the law of a jurisdiction regulating the charge of interest rates. A usury loan is one whose interest rate are usually determined to be in excess, right, of those permitted by usury law. Made me think about like payday loans. You find out weird that a lot of these payday loans are in poor communities, loans where not only payday loans, but, title loans and stuff like that. And usually, you can't even pay those loans back, and you wind up you wind up losing whatever you have used to, again, get said loan. It's by design, right? It's really by design. Let's do this here. Let's go to Fructus. Fructus. Latin. In the civil law, fruits, produce, profits or increase the organic production of a thing. The right to the fruits of a thing belonging to another. The compensation which a man receives from another for the use or enjoyment of a thing, such as interest or rent. Again, like I said before, Social Security is designed for you, and now all of a sudden, that's what they say, right? All of a sudden now, people starting to see that it's harder not only to get their Social Security because the government has raised the retirement age, but in many cases, the government is using that thing to do whatever they want to do, right? To support their retirement and their lifestyle. Again, I hope this is making sense to you guys, right? Right, but the fruits of a thing, right? Like I say, let me do this here. 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 I should have put this up here as well. All right. Money, cattle, fruit, investments, right? Land, labor, intellectual property. For those of you that have probably worked for a big company, right? And you're probably in management and you had an idea, you come to realize that if you couldn't share that idea with another company or competitive company, right? The company you worked for actually owned your intellectual property, right? Let that sink in. Let that sink in. But anyway, you know what else, family? To think about the usury, right? Usury, interest rates. These people created a credit profile. They created a credit profile, and they used that credit profile in many ways against my people. At one time, you know, we couldn't even get anything. But now, with this credit profile, you know, they even though we may have the same credit rating as so-called white people, right? You know, usually when they look at so-called black people credit rating, they will give us a higher interest rate or higher payment plan, whether it's on a loan for an automobile or for a mortgage, you know, again, loans, just a regular loan, or even health insurance, life insurance, even insurance on our property, right? Again, and the studies have showed that the system have done this across the board, right? But again, just let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 23. And let's get verse 19. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brethren, right? To thy brother. Usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that Yahweh the Elohim may bless thee in all that thou settest thy hand to do in the land whither thou goest to possess it. Again, we're not supposed to use usury to our brethren, but a stranger we can do that. In fact, this is why the system, right, this government, bring in people from other nations, from other countries, and they teach them the same principles, right? They tell them the same thing, you know. And what they do is they will build up their communities. They'll even do business in our communities, but we can't do business in their communities. You know, I mean, they would create things for their people, whether it's a financial institution where their people can go to, or educational system where their people can learn from. But again, when they start going through their problems with said system, then they want us to gather together. But meanwhile, they really don't want to deal with us. I tell you what, in fact, let's do this. Let's do this. We're going to stay in Deuteronomy. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, though. Chapter 28. And we're going to get verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. And he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearken not unto the voice of Yahweh the Elohim, to keep thy commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. So again, this was a covenant the Most High established with the children of Israel. You know, again, like I say, the stranger is coming within our communities, and he's getting up very high. You know, he'll create, again, you know, these businesses where he would, these places where he would do business with us, right? You know, nail shops, beauty salons, the corner store, right? You know, fast food, little mom and pop fast food. I mean, they'll put all these things in our communities, but we can't do that in their communities. Again, the government will give them loans, right? Where they can do this. But again, give us, if we get a loan, you know, they're going to give us high interest rates, or they're going to, you know, make it difficult for us to, you know, keep our businesses open and flowing and stuff like that. In many cases, don't get me wrong, you know, sometimes our people don't even want patronize our business, right? Let's be real about it. But again, where did they get that mindset from? They get that from the adversary. Let's just jump down to verse 40 and testify this. Therefore thou shalt serve thy enemy, which Yahweh shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. See, again, that's what they did that's what they did, my ancestors. They destroyed us, put us in bondage, beat our language, our culture out of us, beat our identity out of us, right? Then when they took those yokes of iron from around our neck, they knew they have destroyed us. They knew that, But you find it weird that even after the emancipation of the so-called Negro, right after so-called slavery, even though, we stood in this place and we're pretty much in bondage, what I'm saying? It's just not chattel slavery like it used to be. Slavery upon another name, which is a whole nother discussion within itself. But anyway, right after so-called slavery, the so-called emancipation of the Negro, so-called Negro, Salah, you find it weird that my ancestors built cities, towns. Again, they were thriving, really doing well, until a certain group of people got jealous, showing their hatred, burn them down, riots, right? Even in many aspects, the government even helped destroy these communities, even flooding some of these communities. I mean, there's hundreds of cities and towns across this country that have been destroyed by the hands of white supremacy. Again, but they'll bring in people from other countries, and again, help them by giving them access to grants and loans and certain things, 0% interest rates, or, things they don't have to pay back. But for my people, they make it very, very difficult, right? Because again, I remember growing up in my community, right? When I was young, having seen, the bus station was ran by black people, the grocery store, right? The pharmacist, right? Movie theater, mechanics, on and on and on, were owned by people in said community that looked like me. You don't see that now. You see strangers, right? The other nations coming into our communities and owning these places of business. Just let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Tell you what, let's do this. Let's go to the book of Proverbs. Let's go to the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 13. Let's get verse 22. A good man leaveth an inheritance for his children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. So again, this is what this is about. These things were supposed to be passed down through your generations. The fruits of your labor, right? The money, whether you had land, cattle, fruit, crops, and investments, right? Again, you're supposed to pass it down to your children. You find it weird, again, in many cases, that how it really affect my people is when there's a death of a loved one or divorce. Many times, these things get caught up in court, right? The court system makes sure they exhaust as much as they can from said inheritance. Let that sink in. But again, like I said, those that really are picking up on this, you see how and why I say what I say. You see how corrupt, right? They always talk about this system is built on a meritocracy, right? But it's really built on a kleptocracy, right? It's corrupt as I don't know what. But anyway, again, like I said, for those that really, really get it, it's not like, you have to sit there and say, well, no, that's a far stretch. No, we see it, right? We see it. Tell you what, let's do this here. Let's do this here. Let's go to Psalms. Let's go to Psalms. Let's go to the book of Psalms. Psalms 128. Let's do that. Let's go to Psalms 128. Psalms 128, let's start off at verse 1. Blessed is everyone that feareth Yahweh, that walketh in his ways. See, again, we are supposed to walk in the ways of the Most High. He gave us these instructions, right? And that's how we can become blessed, right? By walking according to that covenant, according to that promise. For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hand. Again, we're supposed to be enjoying this. In many cases, not only are we working against the system, but sometimes we're working against ourselves. I mean, the family within itself is pulling and fighting, over things that were left by a loved one or a deceased, family member. Again, and the courts love this because again, they get a chance to sit there and get their greedy hands involved in it by, continue to pit each other against it, pitting us against one another. Again, it's not for the betterment of us or for our families. It's really for their greed. They don't care. They're going to get what they're going to get their portion either way. They don't care what you wind up with. If you wind up with nothing, still they're going to get paid. They're going to get something. But anyway, let's read further. Thy wife shall be as fruitful as a fruitful vine by the side of thine house. Thy children like olive plants around about the table. Behold, that thus thou shalt the man be blessed that feareth Yahweh. Yahweh shall bless thee out of Zion, and thou shalt see good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's children, and peace be upon Israel. Again, just looking at that aspect, this is what they have done. They have not only attacked what we have built as for this, the fruits of our labor, but even of our loins, of our bodies, through imprisonment, through the system, right? Making sure they kill that generational wealth, killing off not only the generational wealth, but killing off generations, by incarcerating, our people at an unfair rate, right? Which again, I've covered that in previous videos. But again, this is how the wickedness of the system. Again, and we're supposed to be teaching our kids so our kids won't make the same mistakes over and over like we did. I tell you what, in fact, let's do this here. Let's do this here. Where is that? Let's go to Hosea, family. Let's go to Hosea. Let's go to Hosea chapter 4. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest unto me, seeing that thou hast forgotten the laws of Yahweh. I will also forget thy children. See, we're supposed to be passing this to our children. And the sad thing about it is, in our communities, all these institutions, right, these so-called religious institutions, they men of the Lord, right? They're preachers of the Lord, of the Most High, of God, right? But they're not teaching our people these principles. They're not teaching our people these things. In fact, they collect all these tithes and build nothing in our communities, but brag about all the things that they have built, the things that they have acquired, the things that they have. Meanwhile, people are struggling to pay their bills, right? Keep a roof over their head, keep food in their stomach. But again, showing you where not only these people got the principles out of and how they flipped them, but also how the same principles we were supposed to be doing for us as a community, for us as a nation, for us as a people, and we're not applying it, and we can see the ripple effect in our communities. But everybody else is prospering. Everybody else is doing well as a community. Now, you may find one or two, of our, people from our community that may do well, but what do they do? Largely, not all, but largely, what do most of them do? They don't come back and build in the community. They don't come back and teach, right? They move in many other cases, they marry outside of our community, right? And the children from those unions usually get the substance. Again, this is what I see. You may see something different. But again, family, like I said, the system is usufruct in us, right? And again, they have taken all these principles out of the Bible, and they are using them to benefit itself. While meanwhile, we as a people was given the covenant, and we don't even apply it. And the proof that the word of the Most High is, again, his word is true and his law is everlasting. You find it weird that these people, though they do some of it in mischief and wickedness, they're successful using it. Let's be real about it. Again, showing you that this book is not a novel or a children's fairy tale or a magazine. You know what I'm saying? It is a law book. Again, most people really don't want to hear that. They don't want to see it. But that's just where they are. But for those that, again, that got it, that's getting it, all praise the Most High. And for those that cannot see it, they see something different or don't understand it or don't even agree with it. It is what it is. But anyway, with that being said, family, as usual, peace, love. Shalom.